Citizenship on the Go. Lesson 10. American Government. State and Local Government. Part 2. Parts of State Government. Just as the United States as a whole has a constitution that sets up the national government and serves as the supreme law of the land, each individual U.S. state has a state constitution. State constitutions set up state governments and define state governments. While there are many differences among state constitutions, all 50 state governments are divided into the same three branches we see in federal government. As defined by the state constitutions, each state government has a legislative branch, an executive branch, and a judicial branch. In every state except Nebraska, the legislative branch consists of a House of Representatives and a Senate. Nebraska has only one House of Congress, but all other states, Connecticut included, divide their legislature into two parts. In Connecticut, the state legislature is called the General Assembly. Like the federal government's Congress, the General Assembly is divided into a House of Representatives and a Senate. Connecticut state senators and state House representatives meet together in the state capital, Hartford. In Hartford, the General Assembly makes state laws. State senators and representatives in Connecticut have no term limits. There is no limit on how many times a state senator or state representative can be re-elected by U.S. citizens living in Connecticut. Like the federal government, state governments are set up according to the principle of separation of powers. For this reason, the executive branch of state government is separate from the legislative branch, carrying out different duties. Connecticut's executive branch has a governor, lieutenant governor, and executive officers. Like other people in Connecticut government, the members of the state's executive branch have their headquarters in the state capital, Hartford. While the legislative branch makes new laws, the executive branch enforces the law. The leader of the state executive branch is the governor. A governor's powers are similar to a president's powers, but at the state level. A governor leads the state's executive branch, proposes legislation, and signs bills into law. Like the President of the United States, governors can veto bills passed by the state legislature that they do not agree should become law. This is an example of the system of checks and balances at work in state government. Having a system of checks and balances keeps one part of state government from becoming too powerful. As the head of the state executive branch, the governor also enforces state laws and commands the state's National Guard. The office of governor of Connecticut is different from the office of governor of some other states in certain ways. Connecticut's governor can use what is called a line item veto. A line item veto allows the governor to reject any part of a bill without vetoing the whole bill. Connecticut governors serve 4-year terms. Connecticut governors also have no term limits, meaning they can be re-elected an unlimited amount of times. Not all states have line item vetoes, 4-year gubernatorial terms, or no term limits for governors. These specifics vary according to state constitution. In addition to governor, members of the executive branch of Connecticut state government include lieutenant governor, treasurer, secretary of state, comptroller, and attorney general. In many ways, the role of lieutenant governor is like the role of vice president of the United States. The lieutenant governor is elected alongside the governor, and if for some reason the governor is no longer able to serve, the lieutenant governor becomes the governor. The treasurer, secretary of state, comptroller, and attorney general of Connecticut state government have roles and responsibilities similar to some of the people who serve in the president's cabinet at the federal level. One difference between Connecticut's executive branch and the executive branch of federal government, however, is the way the treasurer and other members of the branch are chosen. Members of the president's cabinet in federal government are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The comptroller, attorney general, and other members of Connecticut's executive branch, on the other hand, are separately elected by Connecticut residents at the same time that people vote for governor. This means that while the governor and lieutenant governor will always belong to the same political party, other members of Connecticut's executive branch may sometimes belong to different political parties. In Connecticut, all members of the state executive branch serve 4-year terms. Civics test question. What stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? What stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? Checks and balances. Like the federal government, state governments are set up according to the principle of separation of powers. Having separate powers and a system of checks and balances stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful. Civics test question. Who is the governor of your state now? Who is the governor of your state now? Do you know the answer to this question? If not, visit usa.gov/state-governments to find out who the governor of your state is now. Choose your state from the drop-down menu toward the middle of the page. Then click Go. In addition to a legislative branch and an executive branch, every state also has a judicial branch, or court system. The state court system is separate from the federal court system, although the two are structured similarly. The lowest courts in the state court system are called special courts. Special courts deal with minor disputes in specific legal areas such as juvenile crime, family disagreements, and traffic violations. If a case is about a very serious matter, or the issue can't be settled at the special court level, it goes to the superior courts. On appeal, cases can be moved from the lower courts up to the appellate courts. Like the federal judicial branch, the judicial branches of state governments have a highest court, usually called the state Supreme Court. Connecticut's highest court is the Connecticut Supreme Court. Unlike the U.S. Supreme Court, which has 9 justices, the Connecticut Supreme Court has 7 justices. Some state Supreme Courts have 5 justices, some have 7, and some have 9. All have an odd number of justices in order to avoid a 50-50 split decision. In a system similar to the federal selection of justices, Connecticut Supreme Court justices are appointed by the governor and approved by the General Assembly. There's no term limit for a Connecticut Supreme Court justice, but there is an age limit. Unlike U.S. Supreme Court justices, Connecticut Supreme Court justices must retire when they turn 70 years old. Civics test question. Name one branch or part of the government. Name one branch or part of the government. The courts. The courts are a part of the government, making up the judicial branch of state or federal government. Other parts of federal government in the United States include Congress in the legislative branch and the office of the president in the executive branch. In all 50 states, there are two major political parties that have more power and influence than any other political party in the United States. On maps showing election results, the Democratic Party is usually represented by the color blue, and the Republican Party is usually represented by the color red. Most senators and House representatives in federal government belong to one of the two major political parties. The situation with state governments is similar. As in federal government, most people working in state government today belong to either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Even though there are other political parties active in Connecticut, for example, since 1857, only one Connecticut governor has not been a member of either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Civics test question. What are the two major political parties in the United States? What are the two major political parties in the United States? Democratic and Republican. The two major political parties in the United States are the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Each state and each territory of the United States has its own capital city. The three branches of state government have their headquarters in the state capital. For example, the Connecticut Supreme Court, the Connecticut General Assembly, and the offices of Connecticut's governor are all based in Connecticut's capital, Hartford. Hartford isn't the largest city of Connecticut, but it was chosen by a state referendum in the 1800s to be the place the state government would meet. For more than 100 years, Hartford has been the state capital of Connecticut. Civics test question. What is the capital of your state? What is the capital of your state? If you live in Connecticut, your state's capital is Hartford. The capital of Connecticut is Hartford. However, if you are not a Connecticut resident, you have a different state capital. If you're not a Connecticut resident and you don't know the capital of your state or territory, visit usa.gov/state-governments and choose your state or territory from the drop-down list. Then click Go. Though each state has a central state government and a state capital, there are also numerous local governments at work throughout the country. The structure and function of local governments varies from state to state, but local governments everywhere have many of the same powers as the federal government and state governments, just on a much smaller scale. Local governments have the power to make local laws, for instance, and to collect local taxes. They also provide services within their town or city limits that overlap with state services, like managing police and fire departments, regulating public schools, or taking care of local road maintenance. Local governments provide many important services we tend to take for granted, like trash collection, street lighting, and voter registration. Because of the way the U.S. Constitution and state constitutions set up the government, Americans can participate in their democracy at every level. Whether someone wants to get involved in making a difference at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, the rights and freedoms Americans have according to the laws of the land give them the ability to participate in democracy in many different ways. The biggest way U.S. citizens can help choose who is in government, for example, is to vote. U.S. citizens also have the ability to run for office, which means citizens can put themselves forward as candidates for governor, senator, representative, or other local, state, or federal government roles. Anyone living in the United States can also make their opinion known in other ways. Someone living in the U.S. can join a civic group, for example, or help with a campaign. People can also share their opinions and try to convince others to see things their way by writing to a newspaper. And there are many other ways Americans can participate in their democracy. Civics test question. What are 2 ways that Americans can participate in their democracy? What are 2 ways that Americans can participate in their democracy? Vote and run for office. 2 ways that U.S. citizens can participate in their democracy are to vote and to run for office. Other things Americans can do to participate in their democracy include, but are not limited to, joining a political party, helping with a campaign, joining a civic group, joining a community group, giving an elected official your opinion on an issue, calling senators or representatives, publicly supporting or opposing an issue or policy, and writing to a newspaper. This is the end of Lesson 10 of Citizenship on the Go.